everybody, and welcome to the anniversary edition, the 25th episode of the Sweatpants Sessions. I'm Tom Hampton, your host, coming to you here from the lovely, secluded overdub nook in beautiful downtown East Nashville, Tennessee, the payday loan capital of the world. If you've been anywhere near Facebook in the last 24 hours, you know that we've gotten some news lately. And it's still weird to even say out loud. I'm still kind of wrestling with just the whole notion of referring to Poco as a we instead of a they. It's going to be a little weird for a minute, folks. It's going to be weird for a minute. So today, to commemorate this, instead of waxing poetic about how much I love the band and how much I've always loved the band and all of the stuff that I know that you guys know already, I'm going to take you on a little trip here. We're going to go back to around 1988, 89 or so. I had just gotten out of the military, and I had settled in a town right outside of Philadelphia, and I'd played in a couple of bands, but wasn't really that enamored with the notion of playing in bands, so I ended up starting to do solo acoustic gigs. And at the time, one of my guitar heroes was Stephen Stills, and there was just something about the way that he played and the sound of his guitar on those records, and it spoke to me. And I found out that a lot of what I was hearing that I was attracted to was in this tuning that wasn't a standard guitar tuning. There's a standard guitar tuning that's kind of accepted as, you know, the template for how you're supposed to tune your guitar, and if you learn to play chords, they'll be in the standard tuning. He's using this tuning where the middle two strings are tuned to the same note. They're both tuned to a D note, and then the strings immediately outside of those are tuned to an A note, and then the outside strings are tuned to a D note. So, you know, it's basically just roots and fifths in the same tuning in different octaves, and it sounds like a canon. I mean, how can you argue with that, right? So I realized that a lot of the songs that I knew of Stephen's were in that tuning, and probably a lot of the songs you guys know that Stephen plays are in that tuning. And then Deja Vu, there's And then if you know his solo records at all, there's a ton of songs on those as well that are in that tuning. On the second record, there's a song called Word Game. There's another song called Singing Call. So I loved this stuff, and I loved playing those songs in that tuning, and I had a second guitar set up specifically for that tuning so I could put heavier strings on the top, and I mean, that just really takes it to another level, because these are, you know, strings that are gauged specifically for standard tuning. If you ratchet it up a little bit and put heavier strings on, and I mean, you can feel that against your rib cage when you strum that chord. So I'm going out and I'm playing solo acoustic shows for 3 and 4 hours a night in bars and restaurants and stuff like that. And I wanted to learn a lot of other songs, and, you know, that I could play in that tuning on that guitar. And I ended up doing stuff like, you know, Turn the Page by Bob Seger. Long and lonely highway east of Omaha, you can listen to the engine singing out its one home song. You can think about the woman, the girl you knew the night before. I was literally anything that I could think of that I could play in that tuning, I wanted to try to adapt for that tuning. And I was driving around in my truck, and I had a copy of Under the Gun on cassette, And it got to the end of that side of the tape, and Made of Stone came on, and a little light went off over my head. I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. I mean, I'd obviously heard the song before, but I'd never really listened to it, within the context of trying to find songs to play in that tuning. So I worked up a version of it, and I put it on a little homegrown cassette that I put out in, I don't know, 1990, somewhere in that time frame. And I was driving my mother to the airport in Pittsburgh, another totally separate long story. And I picked up a city paper in Pittsburgh and saw that Poco was playing an outdoor concert in Pittsburgh about 6 weeks from the point that I'd come out. So I went home with this paper in my hand, and you better believe I was taking my ass back to Pittsburgh to see that show, because I had never seen them up to that point. So I went back out to the show, brought an album cover for Rusty and Paul to sign, and I gave Rusty a copy of this cassette that I had made that had Made of Stone on it. And I remember telling him specifically that if I'd have thought that there was even the remote chance that he would have heard it, I probably would have worked on it a little harder. They could not have been nicer to me. It was the first time I'd ever met either of them. And I was awake and wired for the whole drive home just based on that show. I got to open for them in Northampton, Pennsylvania, a couple of years after that, and then I got a record deal through a label in Philadelphia called Longview in 1996. And the producer of the record, my friend Steve, was adamant that I cut Made of Stone for that record. He loved that song, and he loved the energy of it. So I ended up recording it and putting it on that record. I got to open for the guys a couple of times since then, and I was touring that record in 1999, I believe it was, 1998 or 1999. It was sometime after it had come out, and I was playing here in Nashville, doing an in-store show at the Tower Records, and I had invited Rusty to come to the show, and my friend John Rosenbaum, unbeknownst to me, had invited George Grantham to come to the show. Now, I knew Rusty well enough at that point to pick up the phone and call him, but I didn't really know what his relationship with George was, so I was terrified that they were going to think that we were a couple of fanboys trying to put the band back together at that point, because at that point it was Rusty and Paul and Tim Smith and Richie Neville. So it turned out that, it was the first time that Rusty and George had seen each other since the Legacy tour kind of, dissolved at the point that it did. And we've, as I mentioned, I feel like I've known those guys long enough at this point that they're family. I've opened shows, we've done shows together. Jack Sundry, the bass player in Poco, and I have been in a side project called Idle Wheel for almost 10 years now. So, I've been around them to the point that it doesn't feel weird, but it feels weird nonetheless. I mean, it's kind of a strange thing to be joining a band that has existed for the entirety of your musical life to begin with, but then you add the additional layer of joining that band at the outset of an apocalypse, and it's a whole new level of surreality. But the gravity of it is not lost on me, and it's starting to sink in, but it hasn't really sunk in yet. But to commemorate that, I wanted to play for you guys the song that really introduced me to Rusty and Paul and the guys in the first place, that I recorded on that record that I did in 1997, almost 25 years ago. So this is my Rusty Young via Stephen Stills adaptation of Made of Stone. Hope you guys like it. Tossing, turning, rolling in my bed, shady duets running through my head. How long can this game go on? Torn and tattered, well, all my strength Can't you see that I'm not made of stone? I can't live on promises alone. Turned and twisted, shaken to my soul. Living this way sure can take its toll. Why don't you just lay it on the line? Worn and wasted, I'm running out of time. Can't you see that I'm not made of stone? And I can't live on promises alone. Can't you see that I'm not made of stone? I can't live on promises alone. Tossing, turning, rolling in my bed. Shady doings rolling through my head. How long can this game go on? Torn and tattered, and all my faith is gone. Can't you see that I'm not made of stone? And I can't live on promises alone. Can't you see that I'm not made of stone? Promises alone. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for all of the hundreds of congratulatory well wishes that have been posted on my Facebook page today and on Instagram, and the phone calls and the texts and the emails, and it's humbling. It means a lot. As I said, this is a big deal to me, and I don't intend to take it lightly, and I'm going to do my best to live up to the folks who've had that chair before I did. There will be more episodes of the Sweatpants sessions coming up. In fact, I may delve into some of those Stephen Stills tunes down the road. I've got a couple other requests I have to get to as well. So thanks as always for stopping by, and we'll see you guys later on, okay?